Hello, welcome back to this week's episode of Closed by Mo. My name is Mohammed. I'm hopefully your favorite YouTube host on most things real estate. I'm also a real estate investor and a broker based out of New York City. And in this week's episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about something that is very unique to, I feel, the New York City area, especially more so when you understand that there's a very limited amount of space here and there's millions and millions of people. I believe almost 10 million or so, don't quote me on that. In terms of overall residents. So as you can imagine, everyone and anyone wants to be able to live and rent out or even rent to apartments or spaces wherever they can. Sometimes that also means in places that are technically illegal and not habitable. However, New York City property owners and small homeowners and small landlords are still, in the habit of renting out spaces that maybe they shouldn't technically. For example, basements. Now, for the most part, even though there are some, pushes from the local government to try and legalize a lot of these basements, you might still run into issues with your tenants in these basements. And then the question always comes up is, well, hey, if I've been renting out a legal basement, can I still evict my tenant? And do I still have rights as a property owner? Let's find out more in this week's video. To start us off this quick and easy video, I think it's important to sort of first define what makes a basement illegal, because not all basement apartments are illegal. And not all illegal apartments are technically in the basement, because New York City makes a distinction between basement and cellars. But just to give you a very high-level overview, basically a basement apartment is illegal if that unit is not recognized in the building's CFO. CFO is basically a short acronym to spell out Certificate of Occupancy. It is a document that will basically tell you or tell anyone that looks at it what the property is allowed to be used. So for example, if you have a two-family property and you have a finished basement with its own exit entrance and you're wanting to rent out that basement apartment, you have to check the CFO to make sure that this unit or this basement can be rented out, because if it was a legal unit, then it wouldn't have been a two-family property, it would have been a three-family property. You get the point. New York City is very strict about stuff like this, so you have to be very particular about making sure you're reviewing all the public documents. Any and all publicly relevant documents related to real estate is available through the New York City Department of Buildings. One thing they do really well is they've digitized whatever they can, so a lot of those things can be available at your fingerprints as a landlord, as a tenant, if you want to take a look to see what's going to happen. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've run into this scenario, because running into this scenario is exactly why I'm making this video. It is, someone buys a house several years ago, or their parents buy a house, whatever it is, and they decide to rent out the basement. Again, this is not uncommon in New York City. As a matter of fact, local lenders here even understand that, and they might even be able to use some of that potential rental income from that basement unit towards a buyer's approval. This is one of those things where it's so common in New York City that it's almost sort of taken in consideration with everything else, even bank underwriting. Now, the reason why I wanted to make this video or make videos like this is because I've run into multiple scenarios over the last several months where property owners have reached out to me saying, hey Mo, I have a single family house, I have the basement as well that's totally finished out, I've got to put a kitchen, sink, bathroom, bedroom, everything in there, and I decided to rent it out. Technically it's an illegal apartment. I put a tenant in there, things are great for the first year, for the first 7 months, whatever it is, and now the tenant won't pay. Do I have any grounds for protection? Do I have any legal ability here to get them out? Because obviously as a landlord, you're concerned about, number one, whether or not you're even violating the law by renting out a basement that's illegal, and number two, whether you can either collect the rent or the amount that you're owed, or whether you have to go through the eviction process, and what's going to happen. Are you going to get in trouble for renting out the basement? All that fun stuff. Again, every single scenario is very unique, so I'm not going to go into a lot of details in terms of how your scenario might be very unique to you and whether or not you might find a solution in this video. I don't think that's the case. This video is going to be very high level, very general, because I want you as a landlord or the tenant to know what you can expect and what you can't expect. For example, I won't discuss things like something my clients have done in the past, which is they basically reported themselves to the fire department to get the tenant out of the basement because they were dealing with a really aggressive tenant, and they wanted to basically call the fire department on themselves to cite them for a safety hazard and basically not allowing anyone to live in that basement anymore. In situations like that, it sort of did spiral because the landlord was responsible for basically housing the tenant somewhere else. But that is just one of those things that I'm not really going to discuss further or much too deep into, because to be very frank, even I'm not 100% certain what happens in those scenarios because I haven't faced them myself personally. I only know these secondhand from other people that have sort of spoken to me and shared that information with me. Now, the question is, or the most common question is, hey, me as the landlord, or if my landlord is, renting the basement to me, can the landlord still evict a tenant that's renting an illegal basement? The short answer is it depends. The long answer is kinda yes, I believe so, because effectively, even though it is a illegal basement apartment, if the tenant has stopped paying rent to the landlord may still have grounds to file like a holdover eviction. Basically, a holdover eviction is when the tenant basically hasn't paid. There may or may not be a lease in writing. There might be a lease that says, hey, they're living somewhere in the house. They're not specifying where in the basement, whatever it is. All that to say that there is still a possibility that the landlord can file a holdover action or holdover eviction to get the tenant out, possibly, or to start the process. Now, in this particular case, though, or in most cases when you're trying to evict someone from an illegally rented or renting out to an illegal space, the landlord almost always has no claims to get that rental money back, because the rental money that's technically owed to them shouldn't have ever been owed in the first place, shouldn't have ever been paid in the first place. So that is something that you as a landlord have to keep in mind. So let's say you go to file a holdover action on this tenant that's illegally renting a basement from you, and they owe you like $5,000, $10,000 in rent, in back rent. You're probably not going to see that again, because the judge is probably just going to say, well, hey, this is an illegal basement. You shouldn't have been collecting rent on this in the first place. Now, the best approach that I would advise, and I'm going to post my blog post in the comment section below or in the description below, is that, get everything in documents, or get everything in writing, everything that you can, record everything that you're able to, document any erratic behavior or anything like that. Like, I've had clients have issues with tenants in the basement that were lighting fires, and a lot of weird smells, a lot of loud noises, a lot of erratic behavior, things like that, that because they were able to document it properly, when they got the police involved, or if they had to get the law involved, that was really helpful to show in that particular case. So you as the landlord, or you as the tenant, whichever side of the equation you're on, definitely make sure that you are documenting everything, because that is going to be the most important thing. And also, when it comes time to file the holdover action, you want to make sure that every single piece of the process is documented, because in New York City, you may or may not know, if the holdover action or the case gets to the judge and there's even one mistake or one thing that wasn't done in sequence, in the right sequence, guess what? You're gonna have to start all over again. You're gonna have to double the expenses, whatever amount it is. No matter how long it takes, it does take a long time. That being said, I want to wrap up this video saying something more so along the lines of, basements in New York City are something that have always been an entryway for people to get into renting in New York City. Are a lot of them illegal? Absolutely. Are a lot of them, violating health hazards, things like that? And does the city have a rightful stance on banning them? Well, yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of times, whenever you get like inclement weather, rain, water, stuff like that will seep into the basement, and you want to be mindful of that. But it just goes to show why it's so important to try and deregulate, new housing supply being built, try to encourage developers to come in and build more, because the housing equation is effectively a very simple equation. You have supply and you have demand. If supply is so low and demand is so high to the point where people are renting out their illegal spaces, cellars, basement, even garages I've seen, then you want to be able to incentivize people to build more supply, to build more units. The more supply that's available, the less pressure there will be on demand, meaning the market will start to normalize and people will have more options, more affordable options to pick between, let's say, a basement or maybe something that's not a basement, right? With that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun making it. I apologize if I've been rambling a little bit. I was sort of doing this off the cuff. I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.